Appreciate it. Hi, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen, and I'm here at my little cabin in the woods, Murphy's Law, with my dear friend from Chicago, author Ruthie Landis. And Ruthie has all this background in theater and television and is as big as film buff as me. So I'm always thrilled when she joins me. So we are here tonight because we're going to be discussing a book to film. The book was A Water is Wide by Pat Conroy, and it was made into a film called CONRACK. And this was in 1974, which was the year I graduated from high school. And I was not until I didn't really read any of Pat Conroy. I'd seen his movies, The Great Santini and all of them, but I really didn't start reading his books until I was older. In my 20s and 30s. But when I read The Great Santini, I watched the film and I read the book, I understood so perfectly why he's singing like a mockingbird. Because when you're the oldest in a family, a military family, and you have a father who's a tyrant, it sets a tone. And now, the difference between, there's a lot of differences between me and Pat Conroy. First of all, he moved all the time. I don't even know how many schools he went to. I lived in the same hometown my whole life, but I knew what it was like to have a father who was in the military, because he literally, when he was home, he wasn't home much because he worked in the oil fields, but when he was home, he ran us like drill sergeants, you know? So, but when I watched CONRACK, and I'd read the book, the ideals that you have when you're first starting out in life about how you want to change the world and how it doesn't always go as planned. He had so many things that didn't go as planned, but the intent was there. And that year he spent teaching to those kids stayed with him his whole life. And I don't know, have you read the book, Ruthie?
Oh, I've read, I was fortunate enough that Jonathan Haupt invited me down, and I actually did a comparison of what you could do with the book from an experiential point of view, because I had just gotten out Beyond the Book Club, which was a pick of yours, and I kind of merged the whole concept of Beyond the Book Club and diving into what the content is, and The Water is Wide. And so I read it through 2 or 3 times because I really wanted to know what I would be presenting on. And I want to say something, so yeah, I mean, the book is phenomenal. And I have a quote I can read later from Jon Voight, and he says, the movie couldn't touch the book. But what I want to say, and it what didn't come home quite as much in the movie, it was there, was that he admitted that he was a racist, that he started off when he started off being with his pals and in the South and Buford, right? And he really owns in the book his racism, which, how brave that was to do that in 1972 when the book came out. I mean, it was so brave of him. And then he tells about his best friend, who was Jewish, actually, and a Jew in the South, and that they went to Bernie, and they went to and these people personally, I know they were good friends, and they went to the Holocaust. They went on to Europe, and they viewed what happened to the Holocaust, and it was an epiphanic experience for him. And he came back, and he really took a long, hard look at himself. And that was spurred on because of his experience in Europe, looking at the concentration camps. And he drew this comparison to, how do we feel we're a superior race to anybody, and so he did, which to me was so brave. And he was, from what I know of him, I would have loved to meet him. He was such well, he was brave to write about all the things he wrote about in Prince of Tides and Great Santini. He was just brave. And so I just want to add one more thing. This last December, we got to kayaking. We went to Hilton Head Island and we went to kayaking. And on one of the kayaks, it was just me, my husband, and two other people. And we got over to the island that he was on. Now it's not called the same thing he calls it. He changes the name of it, right? And we went on a tour and we went into this white schoolhouse where they shot the movie, which was the real place. And then we went to a graveyard and we saw, where his boat would be coming in and everything. And I just have to tell you this one thing. So at the graveyard, right outside the graveyard, so all these rich people had bought up the property and changed what was in the movie, what we saw in the movie, which was the authentic place. They bought and made mansions. So there's these mansions, and then you'll drive down a country road, in a little road, because it's not big, and
No.
you'll see what was really there originally. And what happened was they put all their money into this huge golf course. And then there was this preacher man who could also, he just had the ability to sort of do magic. And they wanted to uproot all of the graves,
Oh my God.
all of the family and parents of the people that Pat talks about in his book. And this guy was known, this preacher man was known for creating miracles. And so he said, you'll see, it's not they're not going to mess with our graveyard, because the graveyards are sacred places.
Yeah.
Hallowed ground. And so what do you think happens? The golf courses all went out of business. They're all under. And those graveyards, probably have names of some of the kids and their parents that he met and were really there. So it was very powerful. I'm sorry. That's all I have to say.
No, I love hearing the stories. In fact, Jonathan took Tawana and I to his gravesite, Pat's gravesite, and he's not buried in Beaufort. He's
Where is he buried?
he's buried in the Black community graveyard. Yes. And when you go to his gravesite, people have left things all over the ground for him. And I thought, digging in my purse, I'm looking for anything Pulpwood Queen, and I did. I don't remember what I left exactly, but there's coins and just all kinds of things. And it's like, I can't describe it, but Jonathan took us all over. I would love to explore it more. I would love to go on one of those tours that, takes you to all those places. But Jonathan gave us I saw every school he ever went to.
Oh, wow.
I went to Cassandra's house, and it was her birthday, and she served us birthday cake. Oh, here comes Margaret Porter. Yay. I'm so glad she's a brand new member. Hi, Margaret. I'm so glad you're joining our conversation. So we're talking, this is Ruthie Landis, who's also an author from Chicago, and we're talking about the tour I had at the Pat Conroy Center and at the island. In fact, on my trip out there, I took my Pat Conroy doll.
Oh, look at that.
And his daughter made this for the book Poppy's Pants. And I even have on, you can't see it, but I have on the infamous khaki pants and a blue shirt. And he says, Pat Conroy, Poppy. And then Melissa made a Pulpwood Queen.
Oh,
lot of dolls. So they're up in my children's library, and I have 3 more of these dolls. And I've donated a lot of things to the Pat Conroy Center, but these are staying with me. But I wanted to go there, and the last time he came to Girlfriend Weekend, went up to him and I said, Pat, I swear this year, I don't know, come hell or high water, I'm going to come out and see you and Sandra. And he looked at me and he said, it's not going to happen, Kathy. I go, oh. He goes, no, I just don't think it's meant to be. And I get chills on my spine when I tell you this. It's like he almost knew what was coming ahead, which was, pancreatic cancer, and he died fairly quickly. But I was lucky enough to have had several times of getting to be with him and having great conversations. But I've been to his house and Cassandra's, and I've been through all the shelves. And my God, his house is a library, and it's right out on this point there. It's beautiful. And but the movie, I want to go back to the movie from the book The Water is Wide. What I found so interesting about the movie, I hadn't seen it in years, is that we just recently, not too long ago, watched To Sir with Love with Sidney Poitier. And Sidney Poitier rose to the occasion. It was, you're going to call me sir, and you're going to call the girls young ladies, dress them by miss. And he was the exact opposite. He finally gave up on, they kept calling him Pat Roy, the principal of the school, and the kids called him CONRACK. And he said, I'm getting used to I just call me. It's just like my youth group kids used to call me Mrs. P, which was not my favorite thing. But after a while, I thought, yeah, Mrs. P. Okay, whatever. But I found the story of how he taught those kids. And he went in and he was starting from scratch. And, Sally, I think her name's Sally Robinson, was one of his students and went on to become an author herself. She writes cookbooks and she does a lot of things at the center. And, he's been in contact with some of those kids that isn't that awesome? I mean, the legacy that he gives, that lives on amongst so many people, the lives that he's touched. I know he touched mine. And when the book came out, Prince of Scribes, and Jonathan Hote and Nicole Seitz, who put this book together, asked me if I write a chapter. Everybody thinks that the biggest accolade that I've ever received was when I had my book, and it published by one of the big 5. No, my biggest thrill in my life was being asked to be included in this book. And I told the story of Pat Conroy coaching me through when I was writing my book, because when I wrote my book, my mother had called the publisher and told him that it was a book of lies. So I, in tears and calling Pat Conroy, I go, what do I do? What do I do? You'll have to read my story of what he told me.
Well, I can imagine, because what we were just talking about was his courage to say the truth, and his courage to write about really dark and ugly things with a perspective and even a sense of humor about it.
He had a really great sense of humor.
Amazing. And his sense of humor was kind of what allowed him to write about the amount of darkness that he did write about, but darkness not just outside of him, but darkness that he carried within him. And so I could only imagine that he would say to you, your truth is all that matters, right? What you have to say, and
tell the truth. And I didn't, because I just, what good, I thought it would come of it. But I'm working on my next book now, and I have a little bit more of a, it's been 2008 was when my first memoir came out. And my second book is The Pulpwood Queen Went Back to School. And I have learned a lot in the years since that book came out and this one. And I'm not Pat Conroy. I still believe in, no harm to anyone. I wouldn't want to hurt anybody in my life. But I do think it is time for people to just quit. Secrets is what the problem is with this world. When people lie and tell secrets and they don't tell the truth, this is why we get into all the problems that we get in today. And so that's why the more you read, the more you know, the more you understand, the more empathy you have, the more kindness. He was the kindest man I think I've ever met, besides his best friend, Doug Marlette, who his best friend, Doug, was also an author. And Pat asked me if I'd read his book, and I made it a selection. And I actually really got to know Doug because we talk all the time. And he was tragically killed in a hydroplaning car accident,
Oh,
coming back from his father's funeral. It's really tragic, but I'm not afraid of dying because when I get there, Pat and Doug are going to be there and the story will continue. They used to make me laugh so hard, I would just be on the floor. They were irreverent, but they were always so generous. And they both blurred my book, and so did Cassandra, and all his family is like my family today. But this movie is one that we can all learn from. And I don't know how many kids actually have seen it, you know?
yeah,
And
I know it's hard. You have to watch it on YouTube now. I had to pay to watch it when I watched it a couple of years ago, and then I watched it again. But I want to say, right before I came on tonight, I'm a therapist too, and I there's been a lot because of the pandemic. There's been so much bullying that's coming out. And I got this book that's called Dear Bully. And it's this young woman, she's pretty young, and she started a foundation called Bulldog, which they go into schools and they really do experiential work with bullies and the victims, the young kids in grade school and then in older school, middle school and older school. And you see the letters written by the bully, by the victim to the bully back to the victim. And you always see that there's a reason. And you just use the word kind, which is what triggered me saying this, because um, he he shows his kindness, and his kindness in the movie and in the book is about it's about respect. It's about he gets to these kids by respecting them and being kind to them. And this book that I'm reading is saying the way that they are shifting things for both the victims and the bullies is through kindness. And I think that's what happens in the story. Is this white guy goes to this little island, and there's only one white couple on the island who are at the dock. That's it, and have a little store or something. And everybody else, are the Gullah people. And he comes in, and he's a guy who knows nothing about this, but he breaks through his own prejudices, and he sees them all as people and little young souls, and he respects them and he treats them kindly. And then of course the thing that blew me away is that Beyond the Book Club is about experiential learning. It's about what kind of activities. Well, what does he do with them? He doesn't make them just sit at the desk.
exactly.
He gets them into experiential learning. He's up on a tree and he's throwing stuff down to teach them about Isaac Newton, Sir Isaac Newton. And then he's making them understand what gravity is as he's throwing them apples. And he gets them running on the beach to teach them something else. And I just have to say that he was so loose and spontaneous. Can I just read this one thing that
Yeah, absolutely.
that Jon Voight said? He goes, I just want to, here it is. So Jon Voight wrote this after the movie came out. So he wrote this probably in 74. He said the book was very good. It was more complex and thorough than the film, which is sometimes what happens. I liked it a lot, and I wanted to do a movie about working with these kids. In a way, it's sort of a release to see a decent white character in a movie about blacks. We can't all be racist. What's best about the movie to me is the sense you get uh, that it's a love story between these
Yes.
students and their teacher. Here was a guy who described himself as a professional do-gooder. While he was waiting to get into the Peace Corps, he had this opportunity to teach on an island where the local accent was so pronounced that even though the kids weren't dumb, they couldn't communicate with the outside. He tried to communicate with them through the exuberance of his personality, and that's also what I tried to show with my performance. CONRACK was such a release for me in terms of performing styles. After doing Midnight Cowboy and The Revolutionary, which I played very introverted types, here's a chance for spontaneity. On the other hand, Voight said, there's a kind of cleverness in this character he plays that he's not sure he likes. The guy comes over as sort of self-congratulatory. The real Pat Conroy has a certain cynical notion of himself. He didn't really think he was so terrific. CONRACK was directed by blah, blah, blah. And he said these local black kids who played the students, none of them were actors, but because they hadn't been trained yet, not to be honest, they were so great. We set up a situation where the on-screen and the off-screen life on the set was about the same, and they responded with incredible warmth and willingness. I'd like to see more films being made and the leading actors taking less money. A lot of projects become impossible when you have to start out by paying somebody $1 million. That was in 74. I think people have to be ready to experiment and not to be so protective of their careers and their image. Anyway, so I just thought it was so interesting that none of these kids were actors. They were just local kids. And then they tried to create the same environment and then just put it in that little white schoolhouse and on the beach. And I loved reading that. I thought that was so cool.
Ironically, we just did To Kill a Mockingbird last week, and the 3 children who were selected from this Montgomery dance studio had no previous acting experience either. And we're coming up, we're going to do Beasts of the Southern Wild. And that is another film.
Oh, yeah.
And it used, this man was a cook in a restaurant in Louisiana, and he plays the father, and all the people are just locals. And you know, somebody said to me, who do you want to portray you when your book goes to film? And I honestly think it would be better if it was a complete unknown.
Yeah.
Because when you take a complete unknown, you really connect with that character. It's you forget sometimes that you're watching a movie if it's done right. So that's the way it was with CONRACK. That's the way it was with Kill a Mockingbird. That's the way it was with Beasts of the Southern Wild. And I can think of lots of other.
Oh, did you ever see that Robert Duvall movie? Oh my God, I love this movie. Oh,
I think I've seen all of his.
Okay, so he directed a movie called, I think, My Dearest Angelo, and he went into the gypsy community. There was no script, and he worked.
No, I have not seen that.
Oh, we have to see this movie.
Okay, well, I gotta find it for me.
If we can,
my favorite film that I watched, and I can't think of the name of it, but it's about this man, and he's in this latter chapter of his life, and he knows that he's not probably long for the world, and nobody has anything to do with him. So he plans his own funeral while he's alive. Did you see this movie? It was
No,
in the 1930s, and it's got Sissy Spacek, who just
I didn't see that.
oh my God, you've got to see it. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's the young man who plays the funeral director's assistant is so priceless in this movie. And Sissy Spacek,
You know the name of that movie? You
no,
know?
just type in Robert Duvall,
I
Sissy
will.
Spacek, and it'll come
Okay.
up.
So listen to this. This is called, we've got to watch it. It's
Yeah.
got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. He wrote this through improvisation with gypsies, a gypsy community. It's called Angelo My Love. And it is one of the most beautiful little films. And not one person in this movie was an actor. Not
Only
one.
they don't call them gypsies anymore. They call them travelers. Did you know that?
Yes, I know, but in the time when this movie
Yeah.
came out, which was 1983, it's
Yeah.
almost 40 years ago.
God.
So anyway, yeah, I think they were so wise in in CONRACK, and I don't know why they didn't call it The Water is Wide. Why do you think they called it CONRACK?
The director wants to put their own stamp of, you know,
Something.
fame on it. You know, I always prefer that stick as close you can to the books, because like To Kill a Mockingbird won the Pulitzer. I mean, come on. But they did a fantastic job of the film. It's one of my favorite films of all time. But I've watched all the films that have been made to movies of Pat Conroy, and why don't they continue to do so? I mean, there's a lot they haven't done. South Abroad, they haven't done a lot of. They've optioned a lot of them, and you know, Barbara Streisand for The Prince of Tides.
She
You know,
pushed through. She wanted to do it. That's how it got through.
yeah, they
Yeah.
kind of changed the story up and made her a more important character.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, that's the way it goes.
I that's why with my book club, when somebody becomes a part of our book club and they become a book club selection, I don't just invest in their book for that year. I like to follow the author in their body of work, because once a Pulpwood Queen author, you know, always a Pulpwood Queen author, because I like to, when I read the first book, he did not want me to read the Boo. And I said, I've got to read it. And I got a copy of it. And I have all my books signed. And, but to just see the transgression of going through each one of his books. And then I pulled, my daughters have most of my books, because when they heard him speak, my oldest daughter came, I've been trying to get her to read his books forever. She goes, that is the best author, Mom, I've ever heard in my entire life. And she took my whole collection. But I had a friend sent me, you know, the Pat Conroy Cookbook. And this is a friend of mine that had a bookstore. And she said, this was, you know, when I closed my bookstore, she sent me this copy from her bookstore in Louisiana. And the death of Santini, the story of father and his son.
Oh, wow.
And, I've got the one I wanted to,
Wouldn't you think that would have been a movie they should have done as a sequel? Oh my gosh.
you know, in the perfect world, every book that I choose, because I'm such a film fan, every book that I select, somebody should just champion the Pulpwood Queen book club selections, because every single one of them play out like a film to me. And I think every single book I pick, I mean, next month, sitting right in front of me, is The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare by Kimberly Brock. She's been a Pulpwood Queen author for years, but this book, and she's an actress. So, you know, I think it should happen. But I want to read you a little bit from my reading life, because the first time Pat came to Girlfriend Weekend, it was a miracle. I've been trying to get him for over 20 years. You know, we've been doing this.
How did you do it? How did you get him to come?
It was his daughter, Melissa, who's a good friend of mine, and she's a children's author. And I'd had her come, and she won Book of the Year. So Cassandra said, you know, Pat, I've been there. She'd been 5 times to my weekend. She goes, you really need to go, and you should go in with Melissa. So Pat and Melissa came that year. And he didn't really want to come. He said, I honestly, Kathy, I thought reading books was over. I thought everybody's just, nobody cares. Everybody's wanting the next new thing. Then I came to your weekend and he called me a month after, just called me up out of the blue. And he said, Kathy, this is Pat Conroy. I go, oh my God. And I go, oh, well, what is it, Pat? And he goes, I can't get out of my head what happened at your weekend. I've never seen anything like it. He goes, I've never seen readers so engaged in the stories. He goes, you've brought my faith back in the reading world, and I want to come back next year. Do authors ever invite themselves back? I go, well, yes, but unless they have a book. He goes, oh, I will have a book. And I go,
oh no. Oh.
Now I said, now wait a minute. I know how long it took you to write The Prince of Tides and all these books. And he goes, no, I will have a book for you next year. And I want to come and I want to bring Bernie Shine, who's his best friend. I go, oh my God. So the book he wrote and got out in 1 year was My Reading Life. And when I wrote the Pulpwood Queen's Tiara Wearing Book Sharing Guide to Life, I feel like that was kindergarten. And then I read the master's thesis, because this is to read our books side by side would be a really neat comparison, because we both have so many similarities on the books that we love. But I'm just going to read you just a little bit about this. Between the ages of 6 and 9, I was a native son of the Marine bases of Cherry Point, Camp Lejeune in eastern coastal regions of North Carolina. My father flew in squadrons of slant-wing corsairs, which I still think of as the most beautiful warplanes that ever took to the sky. For a year, Dad flew with a great Boston hitter and left fielder, Ted Williams, and family lore has it that my mother and Mrs. Williams used to bathe my sister and me along with Ted Williams' daughter. That still remains the most distinguished moment of my commonplace career as an athlete. I followed Ted Williams' pursuit of greatness, reveling in my father's insider knowledge that Ted has the best reflexes of any Marine pilot who ever flew Corsairs. I read every book about baseball at the library and each base and town we entered, hoping for any information about the kid or the splendid Splinter. When the movie of the great Santini came out, starring Robert Duvall, Ted Williams told a sports writer he'd once flown with Santini. My whole writing career was confirmed with that single transcendent moment. The forests around Cherry Point and Camp Lejeune were vast to the imagination of a boy. Once I climbed an oak tree as high as I could go in Camp Lejeune, then watched a battalion of Marines with their weapons locked and loaded slip in wordless silence beneath me as they approached enemy territory. When I built a bridge near B Building in Cherry Point, I invited the comely Kathleen McCaden to witness my first crossing. I had painted my face like a Lumbee Indian and wielded a Cherokee tomahawk I had fashioned to earn a silver arrow point as a Cub Scout. My bridge collapsed in a heap around me and I fell into the middle of the shallow creek as poor Kathleen screamed with laughter on the bank. Though a fell bridge maker, I showed more skill in the task of the tomahawk, and I felled Kathleen with a wild toss that deflected off her shoulder blade. My mother handled the whipping that night, so further discipline from my father was unnecessary. For the rest of my life, I would read books on Native Americans and once coached an Indian baseball team on the near north side of Omaha, Nebraska, after my freshman year at the Citadel. Pretty Kathleen McCaden never spoke to me again, and her father looked as if he wanted to beat me. I was 7 years old. Well, I too, wanted to be an Indian when I was a kid and built forts and bridges. I just saw so many parallels that I literally read this book in one sitting. And the fact that he got this book out in 1 year so he could come back to my weekend was pretty amazing. And then we all, know what happened. Pat died of pancreatic cancer and it hit him pretty hard and it took him pretty quick. And then I had a button on, and I guess I took it off. It says, "Tell me a story." And that's the name of Cassandra's book about her marriage to Pat Conroy. And if you have not read that book, you will not be able to put it down, because she's very honest and truthful. And when Pat was in public, he made you feel like you were the most important person in the world. But his private life was a little bit different. I'm sure my favorite story that Cassandra told us at Girlfriend Weekend was that she wasn't feeling well, and she was in her bed and she just felt bad. And upstairs there was a porch overlooking, the water. And Bernie and Pat were smoking cigars and drinking drinks up on the porch. She could just hear them laughing. And she goes, all of a sudden I started feeling really bad. Pat, she said, I was crying. Pat, he couldn't hear me because they were laughing so hard. And she said, finally, I knew I was in trouble. So I called the emergency. I called 911 to give me an ambulance. And the ambulance came out and took me to the hospital. And Bernie decided that he was going to go, and he stuck his head in to say goodbye to Cassandra. And she wasn't in her bed. And he ran back up and he said, Pat, Cassandra's not in her bed. And the story is hilarious because he goes, oh my God, she couldn't live with you one moment. She's committed suicide and she's walked into the water and drowned herself. And she had Pat in such a frenzy. They're looking the house all over. They can't find her. And, her car's out front. So they're just flummoxed. They're afraid she's wandered into the water. So he asked the neighbors and they go, you don't know where your wife is and you're in the same house? And needless to say, he said, I ran out the door and I jumped in her brand new car. And he goes, the problem was I didn't know where the lights or anything was, but I just took off. And what happened is Bernie beat him to the hospital somehow. And Bernie got to the hospital. And when he got there, he said, I'm Pat Conroy. My wife, I understand, has been checked into the emergency room. And they said, no, Mr. Conroy's with her now. And that Bernie had told the doctors that he was her husband, and they let him right in. And Pat couldn't even get in to see her, but she'd had a minor heart attack. And she said she never let him live that down. But she said that was just Pat. He loved me dearly, but he'd get caught up in the moment. And, it was the funniest story I've ever heard. She told it much better than I. But
I'm glad she lived to tell it.
Yeah, she lived to tell it. And I think it's in her book, Tell Me a Story. You have to read it.
She was at the last in-person Girlfriend Weekend. I was at that, and you had her, and she was one of the keynote kinds of people. And she was
a keynote speaker for Tell Me the Story, but she'd come the year before, and it was, we had a panel of him and all of his friends to just telling stories, Pat Conroy stories. And we all wore our Pat Conroy hats, our khaki pants, and white button downs. All the authors came as Pat Conroy. And it was the coolest thing ever. And of course, I had my Pat Conroy dolls and my books, and I've shared, I think it's up on my website, you can see them. But if you go to the Pat Conroy Center, after, I always wanted to get out there to visit him, but I didn't get out there until after he died. And I was at the very first Girlfriend Weekend. He evidently didn't get the memo that everybody was supposed to donate a silent auction item that tied in with their book to raise funds for the Pat Conroy Center. Or maybe that year was for the Dolly Parton. I don't know. It was one of those charities. But anyway, Pat, I was not there. I don't know where I was. I was getting ready or something. He said, I missed that. He goes, well, my daughter wrote a book about my granddaughter and my infamous khaki pants. And it was called Poppy's Pants. And that's, so he said, I guess I'll donate my pants. And he proceeded to break his pants off at the convention in front of all the book. Thank God he had boxers on underneath. And he signed the rear end put Poppy's pants, and then Melissa signed it too. And they auctioned it off in our silent auction. And an attorney from Washington, D.C., who was one of my authors, bought them for nearly $1,000.
Oh, wow.
So at the end of the evening, Mary Lee came up to me and she had a bottle of wine and she had those pants. And she goes, nobody deserves Pat Conroy's pants more than you. So I'm giving them to you. I go, oh no, you can't. I mean, $1,000. She goes, it's for charity. It's for a good cause. I want you to have the pants. And I was so happy and thrilled. And then I told Pat I wasn't so thrilled when I went to go get them framed, because I took his book that was signed, My Reading Life, and Poppy's pants, and those pants signed, and had them shadow boxed. And it cost me $800 and some. So when I moved into my little cabin in the woods, I had them hanging in my children's library, and I walked by them every day. And Pat had passed away, and I'm looking at him, and I said, the Pat Conroy Center deserves these pants. So Tawana, who is my executive director, and I went out to Disney World because my daughter was doing an internship and it was her birthday. So we went out there, and then we drove up to Beaufort and met Jonathan Hote, who's the executive director, and he knew I was coming. And I brought him the story of Poppy's pants and the shadow box, and it's now on display at the museum.
Kathy, that was so dear of you.
Well, no, it's no different than you sending me that Betty Davis poster. What happens in life is you get things, and if you look at it and you enjoy it, but then there comes a time in your life where you go, I know somebody who will enjoy it even more.
It's time for it to move into a new home. It is time for new eyes and fresh eyes to see it.
Unless my grandchildren, do
Well,
not.
you've got the doll and you've got the story, and you can go to the Pat Conroy Foundation and take a photo of it, because that's a permanent.
It's in the video. They've got a video now of touring the former building. They moved into the new building now, but in the video, Jonathan tells the whole story. And I'm going, oh my gosh, Jonathan, I wasn't expecting that. I think it was such a Pat Conroy thing to do, to take his pants off.
I know, because if you watch CONRACK, you see that is how he won them over, was this disinhibition. Anyway, I wanted to say Margaret had left a little chat that said in her chat that if you haven't seen CONRACK and you want to see it, that sometimes Turner Classics has it on. So if you subscribe and have Turner Classics.
Well, I watched it for free on YouTube. There's 4 parts.
You did?
Yeah, I watched it for free. It's on YouTube. And I used to have a copy, and somewhere in the move, I don't know where it went, but I have more Pat Conroy memorabilia. When I finally went to the center, I had to get the ball cap, I had to get an apron. I have all his books, all his magnets. I mean, you name it.
Was he a good cook? His cookbook, are the recipes good?
Yeah. In fact, I got a call from my Bantam Doubleday Dell rep back when I was at the bookstore, and I won a visit from Pat Conroy in a contest. And he said, Pat can't come, but he's going to be in Dallas doing a book signing, a big one. Would you like to come up here as my guest, and we'll all go to a Texas Rangers ball game and then go to the book signing? I go, you bet I will. And so I drove up there, and Pat never made it to the Texas Rangers day. It was August. And his flight got delayed, a long story, but I never got so hot in my life. Full sun. And, I'm not a big sports fan. But I did anything to be with Pat Conrad. So after it was over, we went, took a shower, and went to the book signing, and I had brought him a ball cap. Now, I had no idea anything about Pat's personal life. All I knew was his books. So I brought him a ball cap from Annie Skinner's Riverboat Club in Jefferson, like this. And I had all my books, and the line went around this city block in Dallas. And I finally get up there, and he goes, Kathy Patrick, because that was my married name. I go, you know me? He goes, yes, I know you. Your rep has told me everything about you. I know what you look like. And I said, oh my gosh, I was just flabbergasted. He goes, "What?" I stood there for a half an hour. He made all those people wait while he signed my books and everything. I go, well, I go, this isn't much, but I just wanted to bring you something to Jefferson because I'm really trying to get you to East Texas. So here's a ball cap. He goes, a ball cap. Well, how wonderful. I've never had a ball cap before. I will wear it all the time. And I thought, oh, that's so sweet. And so I left. And after the event, we had told Ken Graham, who was the Bantam Double Dead Railroad, we wanted to take him out for dinner for inviting us up. And he said, well, meet me, come back to the store at about 9 and we'll go. So I came back to the store, and it was a store that carried records. And I was flipping through the records, and I felt an arm go around my shoulder. And I look, and it was Pat Conroy, and he had on that ball cap.
Oh.
And I said, oh my gosh. She goes, Kathy Murphy, what are you still doing here? And I said, well, I had told Ken Graham that we'd take him out to dinner for inviting us up for your book signing. And he goes, really? He goes, I go to these events all the time, and they don't give me anything, not even a glass of water. I'm just starving. I go, well, would you like to go with us? He goes, let's go. And he locked his arm with mine. And we went to this chain restaurant called Papados. It's a Louisiana Cajun. I don't know how it happened, but when we walked in, the place was packed, and a table in the middle of the restaurant, a big round table, opened up for all of us. And we sat down, and we closed that place down. We had everything on the menu. He ordered it all. And he goes, you've got to come out to Beaufort. Let me cook for you. Because he has several cookbooks. And
I did not know that.
Oh my God, he could cook anything. And in fact, I think he did most of the cooking when Sandra and him were married. But I have so many Pat Conroy stories, but I miss him. I got real weepy watching the show. I got real weepy watching To Kill a Mockingbird because that's my favorite movie. I cried.
And he wasn't that old when he died. Late 60s, I think, was all.
I think he just turned 70, but he was just, a little bit older than me. And Doug, we lost Doug when Doug was 54. And it was devastating. And
what an amazing life you have lived.
I've been very fortunate. I have, when I think about all the heroes that I've gotten to meet and the authors, and one day I want to just do a book on those stories of riding the roads with these crazy authors. Like I'm rereading right now. I met John Barrett because of Pat Conroy. Because John Barrett had done a story in Southern Living on Pat Conroy. And he called me up and he said, Pat Conroy was telling me about you. And I got him to come. He's come to Texas 3 times.
Oh my goodness.
And I want him back because he's got a new book set in New Orleans on the BP oil spill that he read an excerpt from at Girlfriend Weekend a few years back. But I want him to come back. And I went to Savannah because of his book. But I've gotten to meet, John Barrett is the coolest guy ever. In fact, he invited me to come down to New Orleans. He had a home there for a while, and to watch one of the Mardi Gras parades. And it was I'll write about this in the book because I took my husband and my co-host, Robert Lalou, who is from New York, but he's a Texas guy, and his mother to this Mardi Gras party. We all went together with my daughters. No, my daughters didn't go to the party. They stayed and had manicures. But anyway, we went to the party, and going up the stairs, coming down the stairs in his building was Steve Zahn, the actor who was in oh, what's that show? Tresemme, the section in New Orleans. He was in That Thing You Do. I just went, and at the time my husband says, don't you dare say a word. And I just wanted to say something so bad, but I went up the stairs and I heard my husband go, Steve's on, nice to meet you. I'm going, and then the young woman who played the manicurist in Legally Blonde was at the
Yeah.
party. She was at the party. And so I was kind of, starstruck by all these people that showed up for this party. And my friend Robert Hicks was there from Nashville. There were a lot of really cool people, and we were on the 4th floor. So we got to go out on the balcony and we could just see it perfectly coming down. But yeah, I've gotten to meet a lot of people because of Sandra, and now I know pretty much most of the family. And I love and adore them and the Pat Conroy Center and Jonathan Hote. And my biggest chapter right now is in Beaufort, South Carolina. And Jonathan started.
Well, as soon as this pandemic is over, you're gonna have a lot of big chapters again.
I hope so. Everybody's starting to get back together to meet again. And everybody's starting to show up on Tuesday night book club. We had our poetry pop-up last night with Suzanne Kamada from Japan. We've got so many programs that we just hope more and more people jump on board. A lot of people go, oh, I just can't do Zoom minis anymore. But I'm telling you, we try to make them as fun as possible. And we share stories. And Ruthie and I have just become the dearest friends from Zoom. I mean, I don't know what I'd do without you now. You came to the 2020 Girlfriend Weekend.
I came to the last.
Yeah.
That was my first in person because I had just published Beyond the Book Club. And then that was my first time even knowing about it. And I heard about it.
The problem with Girlfriend Weekend is I'm so busy running it that I don't really get to have a whole lot.
But it was really so great. It was amazing. It was so amazing. And Jefferson is so, it's not like any other places in the world. One night I was walking back with Sherry Stout, and who is a marketing and publicist and an author herself. And we were walking back and we look up and oh my God, the sky was filled with bats. Tons of bats. Oh my God. I mean, like 80 bats like flying all over. I went, oh, does that happen a lot there?
Yeah, we have a lot of mosquitoes because of the bayou.
So the bats,
they eat mosquitoes. We love
I know.
I actually had a little pet bat for a while. Because
I'm not surprised.
I've had a flying squirrel. I mean, I've had a lot of crazy things.
Oh yes, okay. Well, anyway, there will be more in-person ones, I hope, and on the other side of this. And I'm grateful that you kept doing all the things you're doing on Zoom, and people probably are watching them in their own time, in their own.
The YouTube channel is really jumped. We had 435 new views this month.
Oh, good.
But we only have 6 new members. It's free. So I'm hoping everybody will subscribe. And I've done over 300 videos. Wow. 300. It's insane. In fact.
Well, so I've been to 2 of the virtual conferences, girlfriend weekends.
They're great.
And you did how many videos? Everything was
about
video.
40 there.
Yeah.
40. I was on Zoom from Tuesday morning. Mandy and I got on at 3 in the morning and started working on that. And we got done. It was after 10:30 on Sunday night, Tuesday through Sunday. I will not be doing a Zoom that long again.
Oh God, you can't.
We are working on the program now. We're on a little break because Mandy had her debut book signing for all of us today.
It was today.
Storybook and Song on Amelia Island, Florida. And I'm just praying that tons of people turned out for her because she is an angel. I mean, she came on board to help me, and we've never met in person. I talked to her hours every day. And she's like my little sister now. And I'm just so excited for her books. I said, I want a full report. She normally goes to bed at 8 because she gets up so early. But I said, if you don't feel like telling me tonight, call me tomorrow. And tomorrow is, guess what? What is tomorrow?
I don't know. What is tomorrow?
Well, it's Easter.
Oh, that's right. Tomorrow's Easter.
Well, it may be
It's,
Passover
it's
for some.
also been Passover too, but
Happy
you know,
Passover.
and tonight is the pink moon. So look up into the sky and it's a pink full moon.
Well, I'll have
And
to walk out to the road because I have so many trees. But what does a pink moon mean?
it's, there's different special moons. There's a harvest moon, and the pink moon is a very powerful full moon, very, very powerful. So give it a look.
Well,
You
I
know,
want you to remember.
in one of your things, in one of your paintings, you're gonna have to make one of the moons pink.
Well, you hold that thought because there's a tie-in with the moon to our next girlfriend weekend.
Wonderful.
I'm not going to give anything away, but there is a big tie-in to the moon. And Mandy she made an original.
Her painting, I know. See, it hasn't arrived yet for me. I ordered it ages ago, but she sent out everybody, because everybody that ordered one of her the Oliver, gets an original print of
I
her.
got one of her little bees that she did for the last book, and it is a little watercolor. It's beautiful. It's original. It's not a print, but this time she did one painting and then made prints because
Right.
that's a lot of little paintings that she
Oh
did.
my gosh, I know. I'm excited to get mine. It should be, because I want to read it already. So
Well, I've read it a couple of times, and you're going to be blown away. She told me that a friend of hers from almost to childhood called her in the middle of the night this week, and she'd gotten the book and she was sobbing. She said, Mandy, this is the best book I've ever read. And she taped it and she was going to play it for the audience tonight. I go, how did you get that tape? She goes, just the weirdest thing. And she goes, she was just sobbing and crying and telling me how much she loved it. And she was so proud of me. And she goes, I may never get awards or the New York Times or whatever, but there's something to be said when somebody from your hometown calls you and says, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever read.
oh,
It really touched.
and I'm sure it is, because I've loved both of her two short story books. They're just phenomenal.
Well, she's going to be a famous author. She'll be remembered for her master storytelling. She's amazing, as are all my Pulpwood Queen authors, because I do not pick a book unless it's 5 diamonds in the Pulpwood Queen tiara. And that way I don't do bad reviews. And I really actually can't do reviews anymore on any of the online. They banned me. They banned me from doing reviews. I think they think that people pay me to do a review of their book, but I pick their books. So I just tell everybody, if you need a quote for your book, just put 5 diamonds in the Pulpwood Queen tiara. My highest mark, and it is, I only feel like I need to pick those kind of books. And so I do. And Mandy and I selected 48 books this year, 12 books of the month, 12 international books of the month, and 24 bonus books of the month. So out of over 1,200 books that were sent to us. And if people don't think that is mind-blowing. People are always emailing me saying, have you read my book yet? And I go, how many books have you read this year? Have you read 1,200? And they go, what? And I go, and I think it'll be up this year because now that we're doing the awards show for books of the year, we're getting a lot more books. I just got a couple new ones in today, but anyway, I'm so glad Margaret's here tonight listening to our program because she's a brand new author and we have so many programs. Let's see, Tuesday night will be our author of the week, and that's going to be, let's see, who is next? I'm trying to remember. It's our bonus book club selection for this month. But in May, our lead book is The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare by Kimberly Brock. And we always have the authors here so that everybody can have a conversation with them, because it's all about the story, but it's about sharing our stories too, because everybody brings their own experiences and the own place where and the way they were raised into the reading of a book. And when you bring the author into the conversation with all these people, it kind of brings the picture into full focus. And you always learn so much. I know we've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about you, Ruthie, and I'm still learning. I don't know how long I knew you before I became an artist, but I'm going to show Margaret over here to the side. As soon as I get done with these art exhibitions, she sent me a gigantic poster of Betty Davis that was signed to her father over 50 years ago, who was a Broadway star. And I'm already allocated a full wall in my entertainment room for this to go up. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a frame made that has space about this big all the way around that I can collage.
I want you to collage it. I think you need to collage it.
Yeah. And I found a lot of things on Etsy and eBay that are Betty Davis related neat things. And then I'm going to be looking for old movie magazines. I want it all to tie into Hollywood and Betty Davis and all that. So.
I want to read what's in the chat, because if we got a beautiful little chat from Margaret.
Oh, Margaret, what have you got now?
She says, thanks for the welcome. Sorry, I can't turn on the camera at the moment. Love your Pat stories. He and I go way back to my college days. My English professor was one of his close friends, and my husband collects Pat signed first editions. And a great poster. Betty is a cameo in my Hedy Lamarr novel. Wonderful. She was so fabulous when I met her.
I loved Hedy Lamarr, and she was brilliant.
No, I mean, Betty, Betty, when I met her was it's so cool that she's in your novel. She was Hedy's daughter's godmother.
I didn't know that.
Wow.
I love anything old Hollywood. So I've read just about every biography, autobiography, and it's time to start reading them again because you forget things. You forget things, but this is.
Thank you for sharing that, Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret. That just makes me want to read your book even more. Can you message me? Have you sent that to me yet, or is it even out yet? The book. I'm going to wait and see if she answers me on that. Or email me later at thepulpwoodqueen@gmail.com, because that's a book I want to read. And before we go tonight, I want to share some great films that my sister clued me into. I fell down that Bridgerton.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Please don't even talk to me about it. I binged that. I in 2 nights, I stayed up so late and I binged it. Oh my God. And then you're painting these paintings and I'm going, oh my God, she's painting the beauty. What's her name? Miss Sharma of, oh my God. Oh my God.
I bought at the grocery store a magazine on all the backstory on Bridgerton. I'm going to give it to my sister because she is in love with it. She told me, go to BritBox on Amazon Prime and watch The House of Elliot. Oh, House of Elliot. Oh,
all right. I have to look at that then.
About two sisters who are from a well-to-do family. Their mother's passed on. Their dad's a tyrant, a banker. And anyway, they want to be designers. So it's their story of what happens. And they end up opening the House of Elliot in the same time frame as Perot and Coco Chanel. And it's my time period of the 1920s, 30s. I love the clothes, the opulence, the beadwork, the hats, the tiaras, but anyway, so I'm watching that. And then she just sent me this other one. She said, well, when you get done with that, there's 4 seasons of House of Elliot. It was done 10 years ago, but it's fantastic. She said, watch Beecham House. And it's tied into India,
Oh,
British.
there's your India.
Go,
Yeah.
oh no, oh no. So I've got plenty of things to watch into summer, because if they don't start making some good movies, the American movies, I'm just going totally for it, because everything I'm watching from abroad is so good.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm just not a Marvel comic book movie girl. I mean, no, I just want to watch a
Well,
story.
the Bridgerton surely, I feel, inspired your
It did.
your
And you're
paintings.
the only
And I
one who
have to
thought
tell
that.
you that the colors. So, I mean, can you see all this gorgeous turquoise and teals and fuchsias? Oh my God.
Even thought behind the color, because the lady, they just started out, she only had 2 wigs, and then they decided that she needed a wig for every outfit. And those wigs, I mean, I just want those wigs. I have a
You mean the
Marie.
one from the Queen?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And
Could
then
you believe every single one was different? Every one.
and then
I
the
don't know that actress, but she was phenomenal. And
oh,
so was this Mrs. Donbury. She was wonderful too.
the woman with the 3 daughters, who is,
Yes, yes, yes.
she looks so young in person. She doesn't look anything as old as she is in the show, because she's young. She's got long red hair. She doesn't look anything. She's
Like
gorgeous.
well, I mean, what I noticed about her was that body. I mean, they wore these tight things. And anyway, I was sunk. And I loved the first season. I loved the first, and I love the color blindness of what Shonda Rhimes is playing with, but
Oh, Rhymes is
she's talking about status, and she's talking about women's liberation, really, and all the power is in the women.
Wait till you read. I'll have to tell you the inside stuff on Antony.
On the guy who plays Anthony.
Mhm.
I'm just telling you, there was such chemistry between those two. I could not take it.
Yeah, there's a lot of chemistry, but it wouldn't be that way in real life.
I know. Well, that was clear. I mean, you've got a lot of that going on. That's what an
But
actor.
anyway,
That's what an actor. That's what an actor is.
he's
Why actors are actors.
magnificent. He was a magnificent, and you've got to watch House of Elliot. Somehow I could have seen you in this, because it just reminds me, I could see you dressing like this. How House of Elliot and Beecham House. And so that'll get me into, hopefully, into summer. I've got a lot of things, and I have to wait till
I
2023
just
to
really don't think you sleep between your painting, you're reading 1,200 books, and you're watching all these movies and TV series.
That's why I
I
have this
don't think
hat
you
on, so you
sleep.
can't see the circles under my eyes, because I really have not. I've got all these shows coming up for my art, and I, start teaching my classes next week. I've got a lot to be done, but I'm really liking what I'm doing right now.
Oh
And
my God. It's just, I mean, I love everything that you do.
Beautiful
Everything.
Invention was a 2018 release. See, this is what upsets me, Margaret. Nobody's, if somebody doesn't send me the book, I don't know about it, because I emailed the publicist with Penguin Putnam, HarperCollins, Random House, about something to do with John Grisham. I called my friend and I said, how do I get a hold of John Grisham? Because she used to always have him in her bookstore. And she goes, just go through his publicist, you'll get to him. I got a form letter back saying, due to the amount of letters that we receive, you may not get a reply. Wow. Can you imagine? So reaching out to a publisher to get a hold of an author anymore, it doesn't work. So I usually just go directly to them. I have ways.
You
And
have your connections. So I'll see you next week. I'm looking
okay.
forward
And
to it.
thank you again, Margaret. I can't wait to read your book. It sounds absolutely, I had no idea she was Hetty's daughter's godmother. You know, Betty Davis was, you know, all these stories are coming out, you know, from everybody from Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, and all these different stories are coming out, and Judy Garland. It eventually, there's a new,
Margaret's gonna send you a copy, so you're gonna get a
yes,
copy.
I am.
All right, darling. I'll see you next week. Mwah.
All right. And big love to Pat Conroy Literary Center. So love to you all. We will see you down the road, everybody. Thank you, Margaret. Bye. Hi, Bunny.